Has he signed the new beneficiary forms yet? Portia is getting anxious and time is running out. He needs to do this before it's too late, Nathan. That was the text, sent to me at 7:42 on a Thursday morning by my mother-in-law, Rosalind Keller. She had meant to send it to my husband. We were both saved under K in her phone, Keller, Nathan and Keller, Adeline, and her thumb had chosen wrong. I read it standing in my kitchen in my robe with a coffee cup in my hand. I read it twice. Then I set the cup down very carefully on the counter. Portia, beneficiary forms. Time is running out. I did not respond. I took a screenshot. I put my phone face down on the counter and I stood in the kitchen and I breathed for a while. My husband Nathan had been diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor 11 months earlier. He had been given 14 to 20 months. We were, by that Thursday morning, inside the window. What I did not know, what Rosalind's text had just told me, was that there was a policy. A life insurance policy I had never known about, that someone named Portia was waiting on, and that my husband and his mother had been trying, quietly and quickly, to make sure I was no longer the one who received it. Let me tell you what I found when I started looking. My name is Adeline Marshkeller. I am 39 years old. I teach music at an elementary school in Annapolis, Maryland, and I have the specific kind of patience that comes from spending 20 years explaining quarter notes to 7-year-olds and meaning it every time. I married Nathan Keller 10 years ago in October. He was an engineer, structural, the kind who calculated load-bearing requirements for large commercial builds and who brought that same architectural precision to everything in his personal life. His desk was always organized. His calendar was always accurate. He paid bills 3 days before they were due. He was not a warm man in the way that fills a room. He was warm in the specific, quiet way of someone who shows up reliably. And I had spent enough of my 20s with unreliable people to understand that reliability was its own kind of love. We bought a house in our second year. Small, good bones, a backyard that needed work, and got it slowly over the following summers, a weekend at a time. We did not have children, not from a decision exactly, but from the specific accumulating postponement of two people who are always almost ready. There was always one more year of mortgage settling, one more quarter of my certification course, one more project of Nathan's that needed to wind down first. I understood, by year 7, that we were not going to have children. I made peace with it in the way you make peace with things that were never promised to you, but that you had quietly come to expect. Nathan and I were not dramatic people. We were steady people. Dinner 4 nights a week. Weekend hikes when the weather held. A shared commitment to the house that functioned as a shared language. He fixed what broke, I planted what grew, and somewhere in that division of labor, we had built 10 years of something I would have called, on any given Wednesday, a good marriage. I want to be clear about that, because what comes next is easier to explain if you know that I did not see it coming, not from naivety, from familiarity, which is its own kind of blindness. The diagnosis arrived on a Monday in January. I was at school when Nathan called. I stepped into the hallway outside my classroom, and his voice was careful in the way voices are careful when they are carrying something large and trying not to drop it. Glioblastoma, grade 4. A brain tumor discovered after 3 weeks of headaches that had grown severe enough to send him to a neurologist. Aggressive by nature, operable in part but not fully. Treatment, radiation, chemotherapy would extend survival potentially. Cure was not on the table. I drove to the hospital straight from school. I sat beside him in a room with a laminate floor and fluorescent light, and I held his hand, and I said everything that needed to be said in those first hours. That we would figure this out together. That I was not going anywhere. That whatever this was, we would be in it the same way we had been in everything, side by side. He looked at me with an expression I took, at the time, for gratitude. I understand now what it actually was. For the first 4 months after the diagnosis, we were a unit. Medical appointments, twice weekly, sometimes 3 times. The specific logistics of a serious illness landing in an ordinary household. The medication schedule, the dietary restrictions, the coordination between the oncologist and the radiologist and the palliative care nurse named Donna, who became, in those months, one of the most important people in my daily life. Nathan tolerated the treatment with the same composure he brought to everything. He was not prone to complaint. He did not dramatize. His mother, Rosalind, arrived from Richmond in February and stayed. I want to be precise about Rosalind because she is central to this story and fairness matters even about people who have wronged you. She was not, in the years before the diagnosis, a difficult mother-in-law. She was reserved in a way that kept our relationship at a comfortable distance, not warm, not hostile. She came for Thanksgiving, went home after the long weekend, called Nathan on Sundays. I did not feel loved by her, but I did not feel disliked. We coexisted with mutual, pleasant detachment. When she arrived in February, the detachment shifted. She was present in the way of someone who has decided the situation belongs to her. Coordinating with Nathan's medical team directly, reorganizing the kitchen, inserting herself into conversations with his physicians in a way that occasionally required me to quietly assert that I was his wife and his medical proxy and the appropriate person to receive the information. She was polite about it. Rosalind was always polite, but she moved through that house with an ownership that I found, increasingly, difficult to locate the right response to. Nathan said when I raised it carefully one evening, "She's scared, Addie. She's his mother. Just let her be here." So I let her be there. What I did not know in those months was that Rosalind was not just scared, she was also busy. The signs of Portia came later, month 6, 7, sliding into 8. Nathan's phone, which had always been an unremarkable presence in our house, became something he kept closer. Turned face down on the nightstand. Took into another room to answer calls he said were work-related. He was a structural engineer running a project remotely from our kitchen table, so work calls were plausible. I accepted the explanation because I was managing his medical schedule, my teaching job, the house, and the particular emotional weight of watching someone I loved get smaller in increments. I did not have the bandwidth to investigate what I suspected, but couldn't name. What I knew, something had changed in how he looked at me. Not with cruelty, Nathan was not a cruel man. With a distance that was different from the distance of illness. The distance of a man whose attention had moved elsewhere and who was trying to maintain the appearance of presence. I brought it up once, directly, in September. "Is there something you're not telling me?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm dying, Addie. I'm trying to figure out how to exist inside that. It doesn't have anything to do with you." I believed him, he was dying. It seemed unreasonable to put my discomfort alongside that fact and ask him to address both. I let it go. 3 months later, Rosalind's thumb chose the wrong K. I did not respond to Rosalind's text. Not immediately. Not that day. I forwarded the screenshot to my email. I saved it in 3 places. Then I put my phone in my bag, drove to school, and taught 4 classes about rhythm and notation and the way music holds silence inside it, which is something I have always believed and which took on a specific weight that Thursday. That evening, Nathan was resting. Rosalind was in the guest room. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and I started looking. I want to tell you what I was looking for and what I found because they were not the same thing. I was looking for Portia. That was my first instinct, the name in the text, the anxiety in Rosalind's message, the word anxious applied to another woman about my husband's paperwork. What I found first was not Portia. What I found first was the Greystone policy. Nathan had, during the 3rd year of our marriage, taken out a whole life insurance policy through a financial services company called Greystone Mutual. The policy face value, $2,100,000. Funded monthly through a draft from our joint checking account. A line item I had never questioned, because Nathan managed our finances and I trusted him too. And because $67 a month was not a number that alarmed me when I saw it on a statement. I had never known what that $67 was. For 7 years, we had been funding a policy I did not know existed. I sat very still with that information for a while. Then I opened a new browser tab and I started looking at what whole life policies meant legally. What a named beneficiary meant. What rights a spouse had to a policy funded by marital assets. And then I picked up my phone and called my friend Simone, who had been my closest friend since our 20s and who had also, 2 years earlier, been through a divorce that had required her to understand things about marital financial law that most people never need to know. She answered on the second ring. I read her the text. I told her about the policy. She was quiet for 4 seconds. "Addie, do not say anything to Nathan or Rosalind, And call an attorney tomorrow morning, first thing. I know, I said. Do you have somewhere you can go tonight? I looked around the kitchen. My kitchen, the one I had painted myself the summer we moved in. No, I said, I'm staying, but I need you to know what I know. Okay, she said. I know, now write everything down and go to sleep. Tomorrow you make the call. Before I tell you what the attorney found, I want to stop for a second. Because I know some of you right now are sitting with something. A text that wasn't meant for you. A number on a bank statement that doesn't add up. A feeling in your chest that's been there for weeks that you've been telling yourself isn't what it is. Drop a comment right now. Tell me, have you ever been the person who received a message they were never supposed to see? What did you do in those first minutes? I read every single one. I want to know. Drop it now. Her name was Constance Webb. 30 years in family and estate law, an office that smelled like old wood and freshly brewed coffee, and a way of absorbing information without her expression changing that I found, in that first meeting, enormously reassuring. I brought the screenshot. The bank statements going back 7 years, a summary of what I had found online about the Greystone policy. She read everything without interrupting. Then she looked up. You're still the named beneficiary. That's what the Greystone website showed when I used his account credentials. Sole beneficiary, my full legal name. And you have no record of ever being asked to consent to a beneficiary change. None, she set the papers down. Here's what I want you to understand. The policy was funded for 7 years from a joint marital account. Under Maryland law, assets accumulated during marriage using marital funds are generally considered marital property. The policy's cash value, and potentially its death benefit in the context of your marital estate, can be subject to equitable distribution arguments. She paused. More immediately, a named beneficiary on a life insurance policy cannot be changed without the policyholder's signature on the appropriate forms, properly witnessed and submitted to the insurer. If that change has not been completed and filed, you remain the beneficiary of record, regardless of what anyone intended. I thought about Rosalind's text. He needs to do this before it's too late. They were trying to change it, I said. That's what the text was about. They just hadn't finished yet. Constance looked at me steadily. Then as of right now, the policy is yours. She sent a formal inquiry to Greystone Mutual the following day, requesting confirmation of the current beneficiary designation. Greystone responded within 5 business days. The sole named beneficiary on policy number GL 4471 Keller was Adeline Rose Marsh Keller. No change request had been submitted. No forms were pending. Whatever Nathan and Rosalind had been trying to do, they had not done it in time. The second thing Constance found was the separate investment account. During the discovery process she initiated, a brokerage account appeared that Nathan had opened individually 18 months earlier, shortly after his diagnosis, with transfers from 3 sources. 2 from our joint accounts, 1 from a business account I had not known existed. The balance, $308,000. The account's listed transfer-on-death beneficiary was a woman named Portia Sims. Portia. I sat with that name in Constance's office and let it settle into its correct shape. She was a project coordinator at Nathan's firm. They had worked together for 4 years. The account transfers to her Todd designation had begun 11 months ago, 2 weeks after the diagnosis. My husband had been told he was dying and had spent the following 2 weeks opening a secret account and making arrangements to leave a significant portion of our marital assets to another woman. Not in a moment of weakness. Deliberately. With planning. With his mother's knowledge and assistance. With $67 a month of my money funding the policy he was trying to take away from me, while I scheduled his radiation appointments and coordinated with his palliative care nurse, and sat beside him in hospital rooms at 11 o'clock at night. I did not cry in Constance's office. I had made a decision early in this process. The same decision I made the morning of the text, that I was going to be the calmest person in every room this situation put me in. Not because I wasn't feeling it, because I was not going to give anyone the satisfaction of my collapse. I asked Constance what happened next. We filed to have the brokerage account recognized as a marital asset subject to equitable distribution. The transfers were made using marital funds. The Todd designation doesn't override that claim. We also formally notify Greystone that you are the named beneficiary and that you are aware of the policy, which creates a legal record in the event of any future change attempt. She looked at me, and we wait. Nathan died on a Tuesday in March. He had been moved to inpatient hospice 9 days earlier. I went every day. I sat with him, not because I had forgiven what I knew, not because the discovery had been undone by anything that followed, but because he was still my husband of 10 years and he was dying, and I was the kind of person who showed up, regardless of what showing up cost. He did not speak much in those last days. On the Saturday before the Tuesday, he looked at me for a long time and said my name, just my name. I said his back. He closed his eyes. I don't know what he meant by it. I have stopped trying to decide. Rosalind was in the hospice room when he passed. She did not look at me. She made the calls she needed to make and left within the hour. We have not spoken since. Constance filed the death benefit claim with Greystone Mutual on the Wednesday after his death. The policy paid in full, $2,100,000. Sole beneficiary, Adeline Rose Marshkeller. The brokerage account was adjudicated as a marital asset 4 months later. The Todd designation to Portia Sims was set aside. The account was folded into the marital estate and distributed equitably. I received my full share. Portia's attorney made noise for 6 weeks. Then they reviewed Constance's filings and stopped making noise. Rosalind retained an attorney and contested the life insurance payout on the grounds of undue circumstances. Greystone's legal team and Constance's office responded jointly. The contest was withdrawn within 30 days. The policy had my name on it. That was the document. That was the law. That was the end of it. I want to say this simply and briefly because the story has already said most of what needed to be said. Rosalind sent that text because she was afraid. Because she could feel time running out and the forms were not yet signed and her son was dying and the plan was not complete. She was right to be afraid. Because the moment that text arrived, it wasn't just a message. It was a document. Time-stamped, saved in 3 places, forwarded to an attorney who knew exactly what to do with it. A text sent to the wrong person undid 11 months of planning. Know your name on things. Know what your name is on before someone else tells you it shouldn't be there anymore. Know that marital funds build marital assets, regardless of whose account they land in, regardless of whose name is written on the line beside yours without your knowledge. And if a message arrives that was never meant for you, do not respond. Screenshot it. Save it in 3 places. Call an attorney in the morning. That is all. If this story stayed with you, hit the like button and subscribe. It helps more people find these stories. And I asked you in the middle, have you ever received a message you weren't supposed to? Tell me what that first moment felt like. I'm reading every comment. Until next time, take care of yourself. Know your name on things.